Many men wish death upon me, but I ain't seen them. Nigga put
Hit on Jeep, get your refund. I never wanna go back in there. Never wanna go back, never wanna go back. Life just isn't fair. Tell me why you crying, everybody dying.
I said I'm feeling like your mom's way. I'm in the cell with some dogs.
Why are you why are you rapping, babe?
I'm staring at the wall, left hand by my jaws, fantasizing in the bras. G-string match with it, tell me that you're visible. Only making stars, I can never love the broad. Barely put my trust in it, tell me that she leaving while another nigga nuts in it. I ain't trying to stress about it, like too short for that. Had to go to PM, now I go to court for that.
And so you see, Sam G is not the one nor the two, honey. Literally, if there was no Sam G, there wouldn't be a lot of these people. I don't make the rules, guys. Welcome back to my channel. I am your favorite mother of three, Bougie Vintage. And today's video is another Toronto true crime video. Today I'm covering the infamous Sam G. Sam G recently got out. He served quite a lot of time. I believe his co-accused is still behind bars, but we will get into all those details momentarily. If you are unfamiliar with Sam G, I mentioned him in the last video. He's like one of the godfathers of Toronto rappers. He sort of popularized the rap scene in Toronto for the local rappers that are also gunmen. So we are covering him today. I'm sure a lot of his videos are probably deleted.
HS, push down 4-6, know what it is.
HS Toronto.
East Coast.
And be like, hey, film.
Like, she was a church girl, she a whore now. I ain't white chicks, it's a 4 pound. I'm with the white chick, it's the George Brown. On the night shift, like the Morgtown. And John knows G ready for what goes down. Smack and ting, I bring a wall down. I heard what goes around comes around. I ain't perfect, I Scooby snack niggas when I see them earning. I open box niggas if they speaking nervous. I spit nice, I slap niggas when they don't deserve it.
So I'm gonna take you guys back to 2012, January, so it's cold. Usually in Toronto, it's summertime, that it's hot outside and everybody's getting shot at because summertime is when you see your ops. But in this case, it was December 21st. There was a young man by the name of Anthony Spencer. And Anthony Spencer also went by the rap name Tony Traps. And there used to be this really popular studio in Scarborough that you could go to record at. See, when I was rapping, I never went to the dungeon, but I did go to Sunny Diamonds. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The dungeon was really popular amongst local artists in the city that wanted to do music. You didn't need to be anybody special. You could just book your studio session and go. So since the studio was pretty much affordable for those that wanted to go there, it was the better option because Sunny was actually more expensive. You had to have the coins, honey, if you wanted to record at Sunny. So the dungeon was a really popular recording studio, and on this particular night, January 21st, 2012, Tony Traps, or Anthony Spencer, was there recording music. He was actually there with a bunch of his friends. There's multiple stories on this online, but one of the more popular stories of how the events went down is that Sam G and his friend Shever Ashley, as well as a young lady by the name of Princia, they all had gone to the studio. There's a story online that suggests that Sam G had been at the recording studio earlier, and when he was there earlier, he recorded a music video as well as some new music, but then he left and returned to the studio to commit this crime. I don't know if that's how it actually went, obviously, because I was not there, but that's the story that has been told. So Sam G, aka Samuel Paul, Shever Ashley, and Princia Palmer, they all arrive to the studio. And there is footage of their arrival. There's lots of different footage that I will show. But apparently, those three people, they went to the studio, they left the studio, and then returned back to the studio, all three of them. So the girl and the two guys. So according to the article that I read, Sam G was the one that had booked the studio session on January 20th. He booked it for the evening time. So let's just pretend it's 5 o'clock. When he was there earlier in the day, it was actually just him and Shever Ashley. But I guess he was met there by his other friends, because he had recorded a bunch of songs with other people that he likes to do music with, so featuring other artists. So at 11:30 that night, that's when Tony Traps and his friends showed up to the studio, I guess, for their session. Once Anthony Spencer and his friends arrive to the studio, this is when Sam G, Princia Palmer, and Shever Ashley leave the studio. And they were not gone long. I don't know if they went to get a slice of pizza chow, but they were only gone for about 40 minutes. So the story is told. Once Anthony Spencer was finished his recording session, he was apparently waiting for a copy of the session from the engineer, whoever was there. And that is when Sam G and Shever Ashley pulled out their firearms. The way the story is told is that they were committing a robbery. So I guess when the second group of people showed up to record, they must have had items that the first group of people wanted. And so when they realized that, they left to go get their guns, which doesn't really make sense because 9 times out of 10, they're gonna have it on them already. But this is how the media has made the story sound. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm mentioning that the girl was there. But they have this girl all up in the story. And it's funny because she's actually the baby moms of another rapper that we're gonna cover. And I think it's so strange that she was at the studio with somebody that her baby daddy wouldn't necessarily be friends with. But it's neither here nor there. The reason that she's a part of the story is because she was also charged in the incident. But when I was looking back at this story, I was wondering if they got it wrong and if she is really complicit in anything that happened. So I'm going to come back to her in a second. So the two guys, they pulled out their guns. So Sam G and Shever Ashley pulled out their guns and decided to go and rob the people that came to the studio session after. So Tony Traps, or Anthony Spencer, and his friends. Only thing is, it didn't stop at a robbery. I don't know if one of the guns went off and this was just an act of fate, or if it was an intentional homicide. The fact of the matter is, Anthony Spencer ended up shot one time and he died. So he passed away from his gunshot wound. The thing is, because this was a robbery, or because there was only one bullet, I think it's pretty clear that it was just supposed to be a robbery and the murder was not intentional. But they say do not point your gun at anything or anyone that you do not intend to kill. They say don't even pull it out, child, unless it's time to have a duel, because there's no need for it to be on display. Like people like putting their stuff on Snapchat and stuff, like why? Why are we doing this? Anyway, so they obviously do the robbery. They leave, but the craziest part is I'm really trying to figure out why they charge the girl. So I'm gonna play the audio that they played at the press conference, and I want you guys to tell me what you guys think about this.
Detective Sergeant Gary Giroux of the Toronto Police Service Homicide Squad is attempting to identify this woman in relation to the Anthony Spencer homicide. If you know who it is, please contact Detective Sergeant Gary Giroux directly. You are about to hear the sound of a gunshot that's heard on a recording to a call to a cab by this lady.
Hi, can I have a cab to Convenience Store, please?
He has a order here for Ashley, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and he should be there in approximately 5 to 10 minutes.
You guys said that like 20 minutes ago. Yeah. Okay, okay, 10 minutes you said? Okay, thank you.
So before Uber days, it was taxi cab. Okay, you got Beck Taxi, horrible service. You guys watch my taxi story times. 9 times out of 10, if you're calling a cab in Scarborough in 2012, it was likely Beck Taxi. Okay, worst service ever. It's 222. Literally the worst service ever. So on the call, you hear Princia Palmer on the phone call with the taxi, but something that she says on this phone call really stands out to me, and it's the reason why I feel like she wasn't necessarily complicit in this altercation or this tragedy really. So on the phone call, you hear Princia talking to the taxi cab people, and in the wintertime and in the rain, anytime you call a taxi and they tell you that they're gonna show up in 5-10 minutes, sometimes you're sat there waiting for like 30 minutes and the taxi doesn't show up, especially when the weather is bad or something like that. So on the phone call, we hear Princia say, you guys said that the taxi would be here 20 minutes ago, or whatever she said. I'm paraphrasing. I didn't just listen to it, so I can't remember. But the fact of the matter is, she called the taxi before these guys even pulled their weapons out to do the robbery. Because in the beginning of the call, you hear the gun go off. So they say that that's what that noise is. You hear the gun go off, but you also don't hear her reacting like she's in a panic. Like, you hear the gun go off, but you don't hear her like say what the hell, or like, you know what I mean? So possible that she didn't even really know that he was shot. And because she called the taxi cab 20 minutes or so before the altercation happened, this could be that she felt something was going to go wrong and was trying to leave before it did. So to me, that doesn't make her complicit. To me, that just means that her intuition was intact and it was trying to get her out of the wrong place at the wrong time. That's one possibility. The other possibility, of course, which is obviously what they went with in court, is that she knew what they were going to do, that they were doing it, and she got in on the action. They claim that she left the studio in the jacket of one of the people that were robbed, but it looked like she was just wearing her own jacket, so I'm very confused by that. I'm not sure. The video is very grainy. Now, if they had the cameras that they have at the hair store, we wouldn't have this problem, but the cameras were pretty bad. Should Princia have been charged in this murder or this robbery? I really don't know. I don't know. Because once again, we don't know if she knew about it or if her gut just told her, get out of here now. This is not going to go well. And she tried to leave before it happened, but the taxi cab messed up her plans because they were late. Obviously, a robbery doesn't happen it's not a 20-minute long thing. We're not like, even when people rob the bank, they're not in there for 20 minutes. They're in and they're out. So there's no way that she called the cab 20 minutes prior to the incident happening and they were still committing the crime. Nobody's gonna take 20 minutes to hand you their stuff when you're pointing a gun at them. Let's math the math here, okay? Let's make it make sense. I don't think that she necessarily should have been charged with whatever happened that night. Moving back to what was actually happening inside the dungeon. So Sam G and Chevra Ashley, they shoot, well, somebody shoots Anthony Spencer, and on surveillance, which I'll insert in a second, we see friends. There's at least 4 of them, I think. We see his friends, if we can call them that, carrying his body. It took all of them to bring his body up to the vehicle and put him in the car. The story that is told is that Sam G pistol whipped one of the people at the studio session and demanded that cell phones and jewelry. Back in the day when you could steal people's phones and get use of them, now if you steal a phone, it's pretty much pointless. Anyway, he demanded that cell phones and jewelry. Usually what a Toronto man will take from you is your jewelry, but like it's usually not at gunpoint. It's usually if you're somewhere, they'll run by you and snatch it. Chain snatchers. Nobody's really robbing people at gunpoint. This was obviously a different case. They said that he was demanding that they put cell phones and jewelry in a bag. They also have reported online that it was not Sam G that committed the murder, but Shever Ashley. And they say that he fired a single shot into the chest of Anthony Spencer. What's crazy to me is that if you are going to do this, if you're going to rob somebody, I don't see why you wouldn't have a getaway vehicle. I don't see why you would be waiting on a cab to take you away, because I think this is actually why they ended up charging Princia with what happened, because the cab that she was waiting for is the cab that they all jumped in. So once the gun had gone off, I guess it was time to go. So Sam G, Shever Ashley, and Princia hopped in the car with all the stolen goods. This would obviously make her complicit, and this would make her an accessory after the fact, because apparently they left in the cab and went to the co-accused apartment. Now, though this was not gang related, obviously, you know, people are not gonna talk, because obviously the people that committed the robbery were armed and dangerous. So the people that are at the studio, they're not going to be exactly compliant with the officers, and so that's exactly what happened. They did not cooperate with the investigation, and obviously that was hurtful for the family members, because this was their child's friend. So what ended up happening was the family members of Anthony Spencer, the police held a press conference, and his family basically pleaded with people to come forth with information. I'm not really sure how the police obtained the information. They probably just checked the studio log. This was not a premeditated thing. I don't think Sam G and his friends decided that they're gonna go to the studio today, record all these songs, and then do a robbery later. I don't think that's exactly what happened. I think they saw an opportunity and they decided to take it. Problem is that most crimes, if they're not well thought out and planned, are not gonna go well. And so here we see Shever Ashley getting arrested only 4 days after the incident, despite the fact that people were not cooperating with the police. All they really had to do is check the studio log, and they would be able to find out who was recording that day. Also, the engineer of the studio is probably not going to not cooperate with the police, because they're usually, I'm pretty sure the engineer that was working at the studio is not with the rah-rah, and probably was very upset that his studio was now a place of violence. Anyway, Shever Ashley was arrested 4 days later, and he was arrested at his apartment, and the murder weapon was in the apartment. Something that is a common theme here in these stories is that people are not getting rid of their murder weapon, and I'll tell you why. In Toronto, it's not like in America. You cannot just go in a store and buy a gun. We have gun laws here. Nobody can have a gun except for the police, and that doesn't mean that people are not going to obtain weapons, but this is part of the reason why we don't see like crazy stories of mass shootings of random stuff. It's usually gang related or street related, not necessarily gang related, but street related, when people commit crimes with guns here. People do all other kinds of crimes here, but because guns are harder to obtain and more expensive, because you can't just walk into a store and apply for a gun license and get a legal firearm, which then can be stolen and used as a street weapon instead, people are not going to get rid of their firearm. They may trade it, but before somebody buys a firearm, obviously they're going to ask if there's bodies on it. Because I ain't about to buy a gun and then I have 3 bodies on this gun. And then what? The police pick me up for something else. I have them. No, it's not a thing. So because guns are so hard to get here or very expensive, the street value for a weapon is high. They're all smuggled in, basically. Because of that, most people are not gonna get rid of their the murder weapon right away. That's their means of protection, really. So they can't get rid of it. I probably wouldn't have kept it where I sleep. Okay, anyway, so the murder weapon was a semi-automatic pistol, a 40 cal, but it said in the article that the murder weapon actually had Sam G's print on it and not Shever Ashley. This is very interesting because it was Shever Ashley charged with the murder. Sam G did not have a murder charge once we get to the end of this story. So because Sam G had a criminal history, he obviously has his prints in the system. Once they had that murder weapon, they were able to arrest Sam G. They arrested Sam G on January 30th, so 9 days after the incident. As for the girl, it took them a little bit of time to get her. Between January and October, I guess she was hiding out or on the run, maybe tying up loose ends, I'm not sure, but they did not arrest her. They didn't find her. She actually turned herself in October of the same year. The Princia Palmer actually didn't get like a crazy charge. She only really was charged with obstructing justice and obstructing the police. So she pled guilty and she only spent 15 months in jail and then she was released on probation. It took a while before they were fully sentenced, but both Sam G and Shever Ashley, they both pled guilty in their charges, and they were both charged with like a dozen things. It wasn't just 1 or 2 charges. They both had like 12 charges. Also, because Sam G had been in trouble before, he was actually already out of jail on house arrest, where he could only leave his house with a surety, which is like a guardian, or to go to school, college. So Sam G pled guilty to robbery with a firearm as well as possession. There was a possession charge, and he already had bail conditions that he was obviously breaching because he should not have had a firearm based on his bail conditions. And then Shever Ashley, who obviously pled guilty to the actual murder, he pled guilty to 2nd-degree murder because obviously it was not premeditated murder. But what I would like to know is, where is the second weapon and why is there only 1 gun recovered, but the gun that's recovered is the murder weapon, and why does it have Sam G's print on it and not the other guy's print? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I want to know why they put that in the article. Is it to cast doubt on who done it? Like, what is the reason for them to share that his print was on the murder weapon, even though he's not the one that pled guilty to the murder? Which is why he is free now, because any good lawyer is gonna tell you which charges to plead guilty to so that you can get a lesser sentence. Obviously, if there's a murder, I mean, if they have the proof, they have the proof. But I guess the curious cat in me wants to know, how come the murder weapon doesn't have the murderer's prints on it? Surprisingly enough, Sam G actually made bail. He had a $10,000 bail for the weapons charges, but I think he just did his time because he was in there for quite some time and then recently got out and has Instagram. So of course, since Shever Ashley was charged with the murder, he was later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 15 years. So I guess now, after having all that time to reflect, hopefully he's on a better path. But what I find interesting is when these young guys, well, he was in his 20s, but like still very young, these young guys go in as 20 somethings. They go in at a time where everything is different. Like from 2012 to 2021, a lot has changed. The way we dress, the way we talk, you know, the way things look outside, like it's a big change and usually a culture shock. And so since he does music, I would think that a rapper, and Toronto rap has also changed. I'm thinking he's gonna have a little bit of a hard time adjusting to the new sound of Toronto rap because it's definitely not what it used to be. There's still some people that have original Toronto influence in the music that still sound like a Sam G record, to be honest. But I'm wondering if he'll be able to keep up with the new people, because right now people are listening to an evolved sound. Sam G is very much classic gangster Toronto rap. It has a very distinct sound to it, and you can definitely hear the influence in the newer rappers, with Sam G being their influence. They might not even know it. It's gonna be interesting to see him adjust after all this time, if he'll be able to make a comeback, because he was one of those people whose videos did really well on YouTube before it was even cool and popular to put your music on YouTube as a person from Toronto. I think a lot of the guys from Toronto, they were doing it before you could even like make money or before they knew how to make money. Now everybody's monetized, but he was on long before then. And also, he wasn't really posting his own videos. The person that used to do all of the hood videos from Toronto is called Face Films. He used to do everybody's video. He had a lot of skin in the game, I guess. He would be monetized, but I don't think he was actually paying the people that he was doing the videos for. They would pay him and he would make money off of YouTube, or he would do it for free because he's gonna make the money off of YouTube anyway, and they get a video in the process. This was actually one of the only times that media didn't get to publish the mugshot of the accused or of the victim, because you know they love to do that. They love to release mugshots when there's no need to. But you can Google and see images of like sketches from the court, and you can also see people have used Sam G's pictures from a screenshot of like his YouTube or videos that are on YouTube. One of the saddest things about this whole entire case is that, well, one, it obviously should have never have happened. But two, the person that passed away, Anthony Spencer, he left behind a daughter. He only had one child, and now because of a beyond senseless act of violence, she's left without a father. So on one of the comment sections on the surveillance footage of the night of the incident, I'm still recording, so you can't have the music like that. Shit, alright. Okay, bye. So the mother of his child left a few comments, because you know what? It's one thing if Anthony had been involved in some kind of gang war and he was collateral damage based on that. But this really wasn't that, you know. This was a guy that went to the studio to do what he loved to do. And upon trying to leave the studio and probably go back home to his child, these people decided that was not going to be his fate that night. And that's one of the saddest things about people that commit crimes. It's like, why did you get to play God for the day? Like, why did you get to decide whether or not somebody was going to make it home to their baby girl, baby boy, whoever, you know? So one of the comments that his baby mom left was, if Anthony had real friends, they would step up and speak on his behalf. His daughter, mother, sister, brother, father, and myself are left with so many questions. We love Anthony, and now he's gone because someone wanted to be a thug and walk the streets with a gun. I don't know exactly what happened that night, early morning, but I know it wasn't right. I spent 2 hours in the hospital after Anthony was admitted and 10 hours at 42 Division, and all I heard was lies from everyone there. This is coming from someone who actually knows Anthony. This is not the place nor the time to be arguing back and forth about who did what and whose career is ruined and whatnot. I am the mother of his one and only child. I spent 8 years with this man. He was my best friend, my lover, and my rock, and the best father that ever lived. After watching this video several times, she's talking about the surveillance video, I am so disappointed. I see people in this video who claim straight to my face that they were not there. When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even freaking imagine. I couldn't imagine being with somebody and knowing they're friends and something happened, and when I go to talk to those people, they're treating me like I'm the police, I guess trying not to implicate themselves in the situation. Then surveillance footage comes out and I see you on camera and you told me you weren't there. I would be livid. My baby daddy, my husband, whoever lost their life, and you're gonna sit here and lie to me and tell me you weren't there. Did you pull the trigger? Like, why are you lying about this? Anyway, she then said, I know who Anthony's friends were, and his real friends know who I am. I was at the hospital and police station for over 12 hours that day. I didn't see half of his friends there, nor did I see them at his funeral or viewing. I wouldn't even want to see them at the funeral or the viewing, to be honest. If you were there the night that my baby daddy was murdered and you are not trying to help me get closure, I don't want you at the funeral or the viewing. Anyway, I'm sure all of you have gone back to your children and parents and resumed your lives, but mine and Anthony's family has not. And that was the last thing that she had commented on the surveillance video. But I actually watched that surveillance video a lot of times too, and it's really sad. And I get being in a rock and a hard place, because obviously I'm sure, being that the dungeon was such a mutual place, that the people that were with Anthony were not strangers, complete strangers at least, to Sam G and Chever Ashley. And so, since they weren't complete strangers, the part of me that understands the street understands why they didn't come forward and help the police as the police wanted them to, because we've seen in previous videos what happens when you help the police. But I guess the mom in me would be probably feeling the same way that his baby mom's feels, because it's like, if you guys go way back, none of that should even matter, you know? But that's not how the street works. That being said, family of Anthony Spencer basically said that his friends that were no help should also be charged in his murder.
What has it been like for you and your family for several months, knowing that there were people who knew exactly what happened, who pulled the trigger in that recording studio, and they didn't want to help police, and some of them still don't want to help police?
Torture. Torture.
Speak with any of his friends there? Have a conversation about this?
No, I haven't.
Did you know Sammy G? Had you heard of his name before?
I don't, but I do now.
If we look back at the mayhem situation, nobody wants to pick up their life and move to the middle of BF Idaho because they snitched or they told. I think we kind of have to weigh that and realize that, you know, at least justice was served and the people that committed the crime did the time or are still doing the time, and the police essentially, they had to do their job. Here's the thing, people like Sam G, who are often in and out of the system, if they only know one way, that's the only way they're gonna know. It sucks, but a lot of the people in the system have no guidance. And with Sam G, if he started out doing crimes or little petty things when he was younger and he was in Brookside, and then once they turn 18 and they commit another crime and they end up on house arrest, and then they do another crime, and then they're just in and out of jail, and there's no rehabilitation, there's no guidance. Once they release people from jail, they're likely to just go back to do what they did, because there are no programs to help these youth, young men, once they get out. And so if that was in play, I think we would see a lot less of getting out of somewhere like Brookside when they're younger and then not ending up going to actual jail, you know, once they come out of a juvenile hall or a detention center. I think that there should be programs in place so that when we see people are committing crimes as youth, there is something implemented in between the time that they are maybe 16 to 25, because that is the age gap of when they're getting into serious trouble. I think that there should be something implemented so that if they have seen a detention center or seen a juvenile hall type of jail, that they can be on some kind of path or in a program to where they can better themselves so that they don't end up in a situation like the one Sam G found himself in. You know, I hope that now, after spending 10 years in jail, he had a lot to think about. I'm hoping that now that he's out, that he would take those steps to actually better himself and not end up back where he was for another 10 years or for 15 years or for life. You know what I mean? I think that it's really important that somebody helps these people because they're helpless once they come out. They're literally just another nigga. Like, nobody cares about them. You know what I mean? And so I think that they find it hard to navigate. Obviously, a lot of coddling happens with grown-ass black men, but if nobody was caring for them when they were children and they were getting in trouble from the time they were a child, I think there needs to be some kind of evaluation there so that the problem can be nipped. We can't just pray for the best and let them just be out here all willy-nilly. And I don't mean a probation officer. Like, I don't think that that's enough. You know, your probation officer whoop-de-freaking-do. Obviously, that doesn't work. He was on house arrest and still managed to get in trouble because his surety was not doing their job. If you are only supposed to go to school and home, or you're not allowed to leave the house without your surety, I can guarantee you his surety was not at the recording studio the night that he got in trouble. And that's a big part of the problem. If the surety just signs off on a paper and says, yeah, I'm going to be their surety, I'm going to be his guy once he gets out of jail, but doesn't follow through, this is when stuff like this happens. So we can't even just fully put the blame on somebody that does the crime if the people that are supposed to be monitoring him are not doing their job, because this was definitely avoidable. I don't think his co-accused that is serving the life sentence, I don't think that he had the same bail thing as Sam G when the crime was committed. I don't know what his background was. This is definitely something that could have been avoided. Anthony Spencer could still be here raising his child. I really feel like this is failure of the system and of whoever was supposed to be doing their job that wasn't doing their job. First of all, if the surety, now, being that he's in his 20s, he was obviously a grown-ass person, but if you've been making bad decisions your whole life and you don't have anybody to steer you onto the right track and keep you on that track, you're only going to keep making bad decisions. And so sometimes God will either put somebody in your life to make sure you stay on the right track, or he will put you in jail like Joseph and you will stay in there until you are able to be on the right track. If you do not learn from your mistakes while you are given those opportunities, because truth be told, if Sam G wasn't in jail for the last 10 years, he may not be alive. You know, we just don't know the things that he was protected from while being in jail for the last 10 years. And so it's just those little things. And so when you're given another chance from God, I think it's really important to take advantage of said chance. So that's just my thoughts about it. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. I love you all so much. I hope you guys are enjoying your summer, and I will definitely see you in the next one.